everybody to the Martin E. Segal Theater Center here at the Goethe Center CUNY. My name is Frank Henschke, and I'm the Director of Programs and Executive Director of the Segal Center. And it is my truly great pleasure and honor to announce an evening which is quite unusual. I think most probably no one in our lifetime will see such an evening again. It's called the Ecstatic Soul German Expressionistic Dance, and we have with us Mel Gordon from San Francisco, a great scholar of theater. And we have collaborated on many evenings, and we will tell a little bit more about what we are going to see. It's a mixture of a presentation and also dances, and one very special one. And the Segal Center bridges academia and professional theater, international and American theater. And this German expressionist dance, which perhaps is slightly overlooked. There's not as much scholarship as one thinks, since it's such a big name and very few people have seen slides, projections, or tapes or books out of it. What we're going to see, very, very few people on this planet have seen it, I understand, right, from the very rare collection from Mel. And again, thank you for coming and taking time out of your life. I also know it's the third debate tonight. We try to be on time if you want to catch it. And just one announcement, if you have a cell phone, please do take it out just in this moment, because under no circumstances it should ring today. And make sure it is out for all the panelists. The power has to be completely off from the phones. Power off. And the evening should not be longer than an hour, 15 minutes, hour and a half. And there will be a reception here in the room afterwards in case you have additional questions or you would like to have any books signed by Mel or other things. Again, thank you so much for coming. And Mel.
Yeah. I really don't want this microphone pack, but it's being recorded, so you'll have to bear with me. I'm one of those people who thinks he has a radio voice, you know. That tonight is completely unusual. It's in 4 parts of completely different lengths. The first part is I want to run through in a PowerPoint with lots of new visual materials that have not been seen before, of this idea of German expressionist dance, or Ausdruckstanz. In academia, especially in Europe, it's a very hot topic still. The dance that grew up before World War I and really took shape in the 1920s and into the 30s, and what happened with it. And how it was not just the beginning of new modern dance, it's the beginning of many things in our culture, of vegetarianism and life reform and nudism and holistic thinking and even new religions. We'll take a quick look at that, how it all wants to come into dance. So that's the first part. The second part is we're going to see interspersed with 2 very short film clips of this, is 3 live performances that I'll introduce. And one of these has not been done since 1908, since it was outlawed in Germany. And we'll see an authentic hypnotic dance, which is one of the things I'll talk about and set in motion. The third part of the evening will be a panel discussion, but we'll have questions and answers. So I'm going to try to get to this very quickly by showing the PowerPoint of way too many images, because there's a new story here that excites me to talk about. We can take all the lights down in this. One of the people associated with Ausdruckstanz is Nietzsche, who wrote in the 1880s, 1890s, the importance of dance. And the people in the 1920s, and this is the cover of a famous magazine, that, we can take this one out too, that the Schönheit, the beautiful, that Nietzsche was now saddled, this philosopher, we don't think of a beautiful movement, loved the idea of dance as part of human vitality. And this is the beginning of this whole new world. Normally, and we'll see both of them, there's 2 different histories of this among the Germans. One that's very strong is generally a male-dominated history about schools and ideas and movements and exercise philosophies that grew up with this movement. But there's a second history, and these are mostly solo female performers, and we'll see some of this, of how they also developed the idea of Ausdruckstanz. Ausdruckstanz was never a movement. It had lots of different names in its time. It was called free dance, or absolute dance, or new dance, or German dance. And it had fantastic ramifications. The first person associated with this was a Swiss, Émile Jacques Delcroze. And Delcroze, and we'll even see some children's images, Delcroze thought that there had to be another basis of dance, other than ballet, other than folk dance, and other than social dance. So what else could dance be? And Delcroze thought that dance ought to be, as part of this, what will be a life reformation project in Central Europe, which was to develop the bodies, first with children, but not only children, of families. And here we have the idea that the purpose of movement is to work in complicated ways with music, especially progressive ideas in that. And here we have the basic beating of the heart, 4/4 timing. And he started with children. No one paid too much attention at the turn of the century when Delcroze began this idea, but it developed rather quickly as another way of thinking, not only about dance, but about acting, that it could have this kinesthetic effect on the audience and a kinesthetic effect on the performer. Here's 5/4 timing, reading these lines on the top. And people were very interested. We had these exercise uniforms. And again, this will be the basis of a lot of the Ausdruckstanz, the notion that the human body can do different things and move in different directions. And what Delcroze did, he divided up the limbs, the head, and the torso to express different aspects of musical rhythm. Here's what it looked like in movement, which is spectacular. One city, though it started in Switzerland, in Geneva, that one city, Hellergau, outside Dresden, becomes this Delcroze capital, where special theater is built, and we see a whole school. And there's lots of support from the electrical companies for this, because they will use 30,000 electrical bulbs in the walls, in the ceilings, and in the floors to illuminate this. And this is actually the opening day at Hellergau with these various dances. And of course, these steps by Adolf Appia made it dynamic. And the audiences included people like the late French symbolists, and even people like Yeats and so forth, that were quite electrified by seeing this new notion of how movement is not just silent and not just working in ways that are predictable. And now we come very quickly to something we'll see tonight for the first time in 100 years, hypnotic dance. This is part of this new history that's now being thought about as Ausdruckstanz. And this is the idea that dance, besides being social dance or ethnological dance or ballet itself, that for the first time we get this interest that dance can show the soul. It can be this expressive radiation of something deep inside us. And it starts, of course, way, way back before the French Revolution with mesmerism, and it is a kind of a playful demonstration. And all through the 19th century, it grows up hypnotic induction, usually men controlling women, but not only that. It shows up as a kind of popular entertainment that sweeps Central Europe. And this idea that people can be called from the audience and to put into a hypnotic state and do something that they wouldn't normally do was the subject of fascination, but mostly comedy. Until Magdalena G came along, that we didn't know her last name for a long time. Magdalena was a housewife in Riga. And she had no dance training, she claimed, or very little, no theatrical training, but she had these horrible headaches, and she went to the leading hypnotist and later parapsychologist at the time, Albert von Schreck-Notzig, that we'll take a look at. And he began to hypnotize her and then asked her to perform. And these performances in 1904, 1905 became absolutely sensational. They went everywhere, into France and England, but all over Germany, that people wanted to see what the body would do under certain inductions. So here's what it looked like, and there's sort of thousands of photographs of this stuff, of what the soul looks like in the body. And this is also this new origin of Ausdruckstanz, that what is inside us and what unexpectedly comes out. So here we have Magdalena dancing a color, scarlet. This is what scarlet looks like. Here's Schreck-Notzig hypnotizing her. And he was a very reputable and extremely internationally known psychologist who wrote about hysteria, hypnosis, and the occult, which he was mostly known for of being open-minded about the radiation that may come from the human body and how to measure it. Here he is on stage in one of these performances. And so I put together just a few very fast things. This is what a Chopin waltz looks like under hypnosis.
So was he always on stage with her?
He was on the side of the stage, yeah. She took the stage, and these were sensational performances. Again, people didn't even know her last name yet. It was Goupet. And here she is, still doing the Chopin waltz. There's dozens and sometimes almost hundreds of photographs of these things. Here she's performing Wagnerian opera, I don't know which. But to the music, there'd be a pianist playing the music. Here in a Musset, a melodrama that she has no acting experience, but some of the avant-garde directors, like Fuch, said this is the new acting of the future. It was so much more searing and unpredictable than anything he'd heard of. And here, there were a lot of these, and these were very popular. Dancing colors. No one would ever think scarlet would look like that in the conscious mind, but for her. And chartreuse, of course, looks exactly like that. And it was a phenomenon until here's one I like. She's just told to be a woman with a secret. And that's what she does. And then it's all banned. The German government, and later the Austro-Hungarian government, will ban hypnosis. Or public demonstrations of hypnosis. So this is one origin where people became very excited that there's something mysterious in the soul that can be seen in the human body. And here's the person most identified with Ausdruckstanz, is Rudolf von Leben. He's one of the most complicated and controversial characters on earth. There's a great split usually between, because he comes to Britain in 1938, there's a great split between his English language followers and his German followers. He's the most mysterious of any person I can imagine in dance theater history, and one of the most influential. In 1914, von Leben was the son of a military attaché in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and von Leben remembers having, this kind of privileged childhood, but the thing that affected him most was in Constantinople, he sees Sufi dancers, dervishes. And now he has a lifelong obsession with the idea of how turning and twisting in certain shapes affect the human brain, and also the mystical idea of the power of dance that's, again, different than social folk and ballet. And here in 1914 in Switzerland, just before World War I begins, he's a member of the OTO, a notorious sex cult that Aleister Crowley was part of. And here he is with his group doing naked dances, naturally, experimenting with foods. What?
He's done right?
He's the one with the cap on the right, yeah. And here he is as the perfect man. Those of you who've read Steppenwolf, and the connections usually never made, he's the drug dealer in Steppenwolf. He's the one who runs the theater. And von Leben had this outsized influence in all different ways. He had lots of legitimate, illegitimate children. He believed in polygamy, and this whole new movement for life reform. In other words, let's suppose there's no heaven. Let's suppose the Kaiser is not brought down by God, to rule us. What rules us? And he thought to rethink how religion and community should work and what health is. And there's this huge trend in the German-speaking world for the first time that the idea of sunlight is healthy, of fresh air is healthy. And there was even slogans like more sun plus more air plus more nudity equals more life. So the nudist movement begins, it begins everywhere, but in Germany. It involves millions of families up until 1933, and von Leben's part of this. Here he is in his first school exercises. He's trying to rethink. He's also influenced, besides Sufism, he's influenced by two other things. One is Rosicrucianism that he picks up in Paris, and the idea of crystals, and the idea, and this is where he also, unfortunately, develops a habit of extreme secrecy. He's a Freemason, and this really has a great effect on his life. He's interested in correspondences, how movements and colors and shapes want to come together in special ways and can produce a new kind of fantastic art. And he starts with it early on, with how to think about gestures and what he'll call effort and shape of the body in new ways. He develops a new term, eukinetics, and all these terms are slippery and redefined in the German and English-speaking worlds quite differently because he uses them differently. But here's this idea of eukinetics, of course, means good movement, but he's concerned with movement that changes and touches the soul. Here he is performing in The Tyrant, very successful. We'll see a little film clip from this period, Slaying the Dragon, a comic pantomime. After the war, he begins to develop a great following. There's going to be, if I remember correctly, something like 25 major von Leben schools that are going to teach this idea, which he has with gymnastics. The problem with gymnastics is he thinks it's too mechanical, where dance has a spiritual, internal, improvised quality that he loves, that he wants to bring these together to perfect the body. And he's one of many people, really, but probably the most influential. He's has lots of followings, and as we'll see, and his dancers do very well in setting up their own schools, in setting up their own troops. He also invents at this time, there he is on top, this idea of lab notation. And this is not distorted, which is ways of marking how movement works. People have been doing this since the Renaissance. But von Leben develops what he thinks is the most graphically interesting and readable system of marking movement that just doesn't mark the places of the human body, but the effort, the internal qualities as well. And this is part of this crazy book he publishes in 1926 that has a lot of his mystical theories, including how to go into the fourth dimension through movement. 22 movements that you do over and over inside a crystal sphere, icosaeder, will bring you into the fourth dimension. And here he begins to define the body planes. Here's the icosaeder, or icosahedron. It's 24 triangles. It's the idea of this Rosicrucian notion, and later Rudolf Steiner, we'll see in just a second, that the crystal itself has magical qualities, and being inside it gives you a feeling. I've been inside one of these, and of course, you get a feeling. And in the movement, so I'll even show you how to go into the fourth dimension right there. And this is what it feels like. So, and these drawings, of course, are fantastic, but there's even movie clips of this. And this, what happens is his mysticism, which reaches its height in 1926, begins to diminish. He begins to think differently about it, partly because Germany is changing as well. And here he is with the Latin notation, which is firmly in place by 1928. And it's also part of his dance teaching. Von Leben, and this becomes a great and still controversial topic, what happened to these Ausdrucks schools and teachers? Some were Jewish and communist, homosexual, and many of those people left in 33, 34, but many of them did not. And von Leben actually, in a still controversy about it, begins to continue working with this choral movement. And before the 1936 Olympics, this is one of the high points. Goebbels hates him. He has a lot of problems with his competitors. And of course, you have to, at some point by 1936, to be at a cultural position, you have to become a member of the Nazi Party, which von Leben cannot because he's been a Freemason, and it's a complicated issue. He decides he's in great trouble. He has many enemies. Of course, he's has lots of Jewish pupils and so forth. And now, for the first time, he realizes he has nothing again. And he leaves Germany with 10 marks in his pocket, manages to escape. He goes to Britain, to Dartington, where Ravi Shankar is, and Kurt Joost, and who will invite him there. And Michael Chekhov will be there and so forth in this utopian colony or estate in Dartington in Devonshire. And here he still is working with Ecosaeder, but von Leben now does something completely different. He begins to work for the British war effort and is very, very influential in thinking about the labor process of how people in the war industry get tired and how their bodies need to relax. And he has very complicated and successful ideas of bringing this war industry into its height. And von Leben will die, I think it's 1958, and almost never talk, or really never talk about his past. He had published an autobiography at 35, but even that had actually very little in it. So it's still, his life is being riddled. One of the people he borrowed from, and all these people are enemies of each other, is Rudolf Steiner. And Steiner is still well known today. He's the creator of the scientific religion anthroposophy. And as we see here in 1910, an anthroposophy is a way of bringing, it's one of the first of the new religions, of bringing movement and dance into this notion of kinesthesia, of the correspondences between color and form. And a part of it is eurythmy. That eurythmy is the notion that sound, idea, and movement is all related. So a typical eurythmic movement is the sound ah, where the movement is this. And it's as if a person seeing the sunlight for the first time, like a caveman from a cave. Ah. And the second movement is hey, and this protection and so forth. Every sound, every phoneme has a movement that wants to become dance. And here's where, which later burns down in Dornach, a Goethe Natium, because Goethe is the master, and of course the first person to look at color psychology and lots of other scientific ideas. And here, of course, with Steiner, we get the beginnings of organic farming and a lot of the things that we just follow today begin with this particular religion that still exists. Here's two examples of self-assertion and happiness, these various states. One of the problems, of course, was that it was mechanical, and it was interested in mystery religion, same as von Leben, but it didn't have that dance expertise or professionalism. And here's a picture, almost contemporary or from a generation ago, to show that this still goes on. Another person, and also a bitter enemy of von Leben, is Rudolf Bode, who begins to think, like von Leben, that dance doesn't have to be about music. That dance ought to be about something else. And here, this will have a tremendous influence on the Russian cinema. People like Eisenstein will create a whole system from this, and goes to see Rudolf Bode. That Bode has this notion that everyday movement, like throwing a hammer, can be done in a very expressive way where you feel the whole body. And famously, Bode says that the difference between how a chorus girl smiles with her lips and how a peasant girl smiles with her body is what you have to learn. How to use your whole body in expressiveness. And he calls it Ausdrucksgymnastik. And here there's lots of examples of, he has these pressing and pulling exercises, and the idea is to get the whole body in movement. Bode becomes a leading Nazi and one of the enemies of von Leben. Meanwhile, we go back to our women. While this is going on, there's women on the Berlin stage that are creating this Ausdruckstanz. And one is Olga Desmond, a British woman, with this German strongman, Adolf Salga. And they do these naked living statues because in Wilhelmian Berlin, you could have naked models as a painter. So they put these on the stage and say everyone can draw them because they're not moving. And actually Ziegfeld did exactly the same thing and included a little pencil in the program with a blank sheet for naked models like this. She begins to move and it changes everything. That it shows the naked female body, and here's the spear dance I tried to put together that caused a sensation. That it was another way, independent of Isadora, who's also, of course, very influential, of showing this free form that there's something spiritual can precede movement or work with it. And here in a vulgar way, we have this naked dancing here, beauty evenings or beauty dances. And this is a very notorious character, Shelley von Wright. And I tried to put together, I put way too many things here, of what a typical naked evening looked like in 1920 that got her arrested. That nothing got arrested till the very last act. First, her girls come out, eat from, as Eve has to, the apple, and then they can dance around. Bacchanale. And again, playing men and women. This whole thing was a fascination. And De Wright's husband would come out and to say that I know none of you will get sexually excited seeing this because you're artists. And here I put together the Opium Rush, which was well known, where Shelley has this fantasy after smoking opium, and then she's killed by this Chinese man, naturally. Here's her alone. Here, one that everyone loved, the Inca Sacrifice, not looking much like we would think. And the thing that finally got her arrested, which was carried in the front page of the New York Times, the Wayward Nun, where she's a nun who's leaving the convent, and she finds a crucifix and begins to masturbate with it. So, would not get National Endowment. And her husband wisely fought the trial until the inflation came when the money was worthless. So he got off. Here's someone I've written about, wrote a book about, and the most notorious character came out of Chile's troupe. This is Anita Berber. And Berber was the most notorious and now has been revived for lots of reasons. One, that she was a movie star. She was a fashion celebrity. She was the most decadent person in a very decadent world where she'd gotten arrested many times. But she was also one of the cleverest and really most brilliant, that she danced her addictions, which were everything. But she always had a theory for it. And a typical Berber theory is she would dance naked. And the manifesto would be that the most traumatic moment of everyone's life is when we realize as infants that our mother's nipple and our lips are separate. And we never recover from that, according to Berber. She says, when you see naked breasts in the perfect perspective, the trauma comes back to you. So that's what she danced. Here's her self-portraits. I just put down way too many images. But she looks totally modern, like she's living in Brooklyn today. Here with her whip and her halo. Here she is in Del Cruz training, where she starts with everyone else.
She's small.
She's tiny. She's absolutely tiny thing. And as a matter of fact, there are many articles just to how small her feet were, including in the American tabloid press, that there was even a dance contest based on one of her costumes in Greenwich Village. That her first dances, she's quite innocent, and she's very good with costumes, which she'll design herself. Here she is doing Korean dance in this typical exotica that rushed through European dances. And they even made a porcelain, very expensive porcelain statues you can buy on eBay of her, several of them. And so she was in all the magazines. She was bisexual. She took drugs openly. She was famous for showing up naked in restaurants and with a chimpanzee, a Reese monkey around her neck and a pack of cocaine. And she was devoted to every kind of drug and danced it. And here she is. She becomes involved in this early fashion world in 1920. And here's this portfolio, one of the few things ever banned in this period, which I managed to get on eBay. There was only 2 copies in the world of it. This lithographs of Anita Berber that were banned. And these are her costumes. And some of them looking modern, surprisingly so. She becomes a movie star, but unpredictable one. Here she's on the cover of the leading Playboy-type magazine. Marlene Dietrich becomes her lover after she's fired from being a violinist in the cinema. And Dietrich gets lots of ideas, of course, between 1920 and 1922 by living with Berber, like How to Become a Femme Fatale. There are books written about her by Vicky Baum's first book. Vicky Baum wrote Grand Hotel, but her first book was this prescient idea of who Berber was. And Berber gets thrown off film set because she's totally addicted to her designer drug, which is half ether and half chloroform mixed together with a white rose that should bite off the frozen petals. And that's no good when you're in the movies. A decadent dancer, Sebastian Drosta, comes into her life in 22, and he's this very important character who's lost to history. He was in The New Yorker, did a whole piece on him. He brought this German expressionist dancing to New York. He was a man about town and talked about, he used to claim that he walked around with the skull of King Tut and all of this, which he did, but it was some skull. And he gets together with a Berber and understands her qualities. And they do an evening, which will be the last great Berber performance of Ausflugstanz in Vienna. It's called The Dances of Depravity, Horror, and Ecstasy. And it's a great smash. And I'll put it together as fast as I can. It starts off with a Berber as a porcelain doll. And Drosta wakes her up. And she dances around the stage and laughs at the audience, dance 1. Drosta does a Byzantine whip dance we see here. And now we get dances that she'll be doing the rest of her career. Cocaine, where she plays a streetwalker under a street light in this oversized chair. And she designs this costume, which is quite provocative, of course. And here there's endless amounts of images in the time of it, and this is how it ends. That the cocaine has got to her and gives her a rush. Drosta plays Saint Sebastian the Martyr. And again, there's so many beautiful graphics. They play Suicide to Beethoven, a suite. And here she tickles him, and of course, he strangles her. She plays a nun, leaving the world. He plays an Egyptian prince who discovers that all of his status is based on the cruelty to tens of thousands of slaves. So Drosta does what Drosta does, he takes off his clothes. Morphine, this is a dance that was quite beautiful and captured in the Otto Dix painting of her, that she's longing for the morphine rush. She shoots up on her thigh, she walks around this chair, reaches for the moon, and she can't find it. And then she falls on the chair. He plays someone trying to escape from a lunatic house, of course gets naked to do it. And I put one small thing, because there's so little time here, that there were poems that the two of them wrote for the dances, and this is part of one of them. She comes in this cape, dripping silver, moon silver, silent silver, wavy waves, disappearing like breath, high above, ether, haze, moon, thoughtless children. There is a divine female. She is not woman. She is not man. She is not animal. She is not God. She is moon, silver, dangling, dripping, silver. She is wearing the coat of divine disillusion. She holds the crown of divine lust. She is wearing the green sapphire of torture. She is cracking her whip. Astarte takes the big bowl of lust, grabs it with trembling fingers, takes the faces of the boys, the heads of the prostitutes, and she laughs and dances. So that's part of a poem that goes with all these dances. Here's the Night of the Bourgeois. She gets naked again, and then they suicide. There are other, even more controversial dances she does. This is the most controversial. Drosta is hung naked. He ejaculates, and she's naked on her back and catches the ejaculate lying down. You can imagine what poor Vienna thought. That here's a cartoon I found where Adam and Eve are talking. They say, what are we going to do after leaving paradise? They say, we'll do what Drosta and Berber did. We'll appear naked on the stage. And her last husband is this son of American pastor who comes, doesn't know a word of German. They get married. That Berber is banned. Drosta comes to America. Berber is banned all over Europe. So she goes to the Mediterranean and into Greece and all the French and British colonies. And here she does a famous dance, Salome, which is the opposite of anyone else has ever done it. She starts with stepping out of a bucket or a bathtub type container of blood, and she puts on clothing. That's her dance of the seven veils.
How tall was she?
She was about 5'4", 5'5", and tiny, and people remarked about it. And here, after taking all the drugs, her new husband wanted her to stop drinking cognac, and of course she dies immediately after. And she's buried in a pauper's grave today in Berlin. We just have time to talk about two more. Valeska Garrett was Anita Berber's best friend, who was exactly the opposite. Berber was this weird glamour and out of control performance stylist, and very celebrated and famous, but only for 2 years. And people tired of this craziness on the stage. They're looking for other novelties. But Garrett lasted a long, long time. Garrett, who had worked with her, was a dancer of the grotesque. Goebbels was obsessed with her, as many Nazis were, that she was the embodiment of this Jewish contamination of German art. And she reveled in that. And so she was like second on the list after Albert Einstein of cultural figures whose property had to be expropriated. And here she is starting off with Anita Berber in the same evening of dances. And what she tried to do was to work against this normal type of what dance was. And it was so fantastic and so, we'll see an example of it, so strange that avant-garde theater people began to fall in love with it. So she worked in Expressionist theater. She worked in Dada theater. That when she performed and complained to Brecht, what is this bullshit? What is this thing, alienation effect? He says, it's what you do. And when she went to Moscow, Mayor Holt fell in love with her and said she was the most biomechanical personality he'd ever seen. And Eisenstein only slept, that we know of, with one woman in the world, and it was with her. And Cocteau called her the dancer of surrealism. So she had, as we'll hear, here she is beginning to find her own. She plays a samurai who finds out that the geisha he's engaged to has rejected him, so she commits harikari. Here's something that we'll see. The first time done, I don't know when, Canet. This is about the first day of a prostitute in Paris from Les Zones, from outside the slums of Paris, coming into the streets of Paris to become a prostitute. And we see her first day. And this is the end of her first day. Here she does all the animals in the circus, all the trainers. Here she plays a French procuress. Here, and we'll actually see a clip of this, that was shot for Brecht. She plays Death. And no one knew what to make of it. They said it wasn't dance, it wasn't acting, what was it? And of course, now we think of it as being a performance art. She put a string of not just character sketches, but all kinds of strange things together. And if the audience didn't like it, she'd say, fuck you, and walk off and do the next one. By the way, that was Hirschfeld, who saw her in Berlin, drew this. Here she's doing her mocking of the Charleston. And here I found in a newspaper, can you believe it, a regular newspaper, color print of an audience watching her in befuddlement. Here's a typical Garrett evening. She starts off playing Anxiety. Then A Wet Nurse, where she shows her breast. Then that immediately turns into a boxer. And then she plays Amusing Despair. And then Old Paris. Then Every Sport There Is, and ends with Sorrow. Of course, in 1933, she has to leave. She's in trouble even with the nationalists that are also the rival of the Nazis, that they're very, very concerned about her popularity, which is immense. She goes to Paris and London, where she performs Everyone in the Berlin Underground. And of course, she comes to New York, where she performs this, Baby. She buys in One Sheridan Square. She buys a cabaret, and she hires 4 waiters, 4 young people. Tennessee Williams, Robert Rauschenberg, Judith Malina, and Julian Becker are 4 waiters. And it doesn't work at all. The mafia puts her out of business, and she returns to Germany. All right. I want to show just one more person, because we're running out of time. And this is someone who puts the solo performers and the schools, basically by men, of course, together. There were several of these. This was an enormous phenomenon, and this is Mary Wigman. We'll also see some live work from her. Wigman was a student, a Del Cruz student, like so many, who worked with von Leben, and began not to like von Leben, and started out on her own with a troupe that was, I don't know if it's exclusively, but mostly women. And here's, by 1923, she's recognized as one of the star solo performers, but she also has her ensemble. And here, she's interested in folk and ritual themes, and really becomes this sort of inspiration we're more accustomed to in the American modern dance of Graham and people like that. Of course, were affected by what she was doing. Here's the witch dance that was done with a mask and without, and it was also done to percussive sounds of gongs and drums. The death dance. And she also became ensnared in the question of when the Nazis come to power, or whether to work for them or not, these notions, whether they're pro or anti-Hitler, is usually disguised, and most of them fell into a vast gray area of being sympathetic with the national rebuilding, but of course not at all sympathetic, even in its earliest forms, with how Germans were identified and selected out and that. And I'm going to stop here so we have enough time to see a live performance. Actually, we'll see 3 of them. Carly Eckhart is going to be performing the 3 dances, and the first one is a recreation, inspiration of Mary Wigmund's witch dance, Hexentanz, and we'll see it in its earliest forms when it was filmed in 1924. Witch dance. Now we'll see a film clip of von Leben's The Living Idol. This is the end of it, and of course, as always, von Leben plays the master guru character. And we just need the lights down. This music's all wrong, so don't even listen to what I have here.
All wrong and it wasn't part of the original?
What?
All wrong in what sense?
Pardon?
You said all wrong in what sense?
No, this music just added. There's no music at all. There's percussion sound. In other words, it wasn't recorded with this music. Here's Helena von Leben's mistresses who had her own school. We'll just look for a second at this. She later goes to Italy and tries to follow him. He leaves children everywhere. and it becomes a strange phenomenon. But part of this, okay, that now we're going to see a Valeska Gert dance. And this is called Canaille. It's what we saw a couple images of. It's the Canaille is French for trash or what prostitutes of the lowest order were called. And these were usually women who'd come in from the zone, the slum infested area around Paris, into Montmartre and tried their hand at street walking. So this is a Gert's dance with sometimes done with music and sometimes done without, of Canaille. All right, now I want to show a second film clip. This is Gert, who we just saw, now dancing the character of death. And this was originally made for Little Mahogany. And let me try to get this right. Okay, and here it is. That was a dance. We'll just look at one more quick one that's captured also in the early 20s. This is called Procurus, and it's very, very short. I'm going to have to start again. It's so short. There. All right, and now for the last part of the performance evening, that we're going to see an attempt to find our way back 100 and some years to Albert von Schreck-Nozick, this time therapist, the hypnotherapist, is Tristan Poirier, Kristen. And this is for real, so which is the way we wanted it, that to have a hypnotic induction and to see what would happen, including nothing. And Carly will be the subject. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention something. The hypnotic aspect that the audience would watch, it was for the Magdalena, and so they would catch some of it, and this was not really part of the performance. So, so we decided to do it exactly that way.
Noticing how when your unconscious mind comes forward, it can hold up your arm automatically. And that you can forget that you're even holding up your arm at all by paying attention to something else, like your other hand, perhaps. Paying attention, perhaps, to your feet flat against the floor. That's right. Paying attention to the chair, particular quality of it, supporting it. And then paying attention to what's happening on the inside. As you just hold up your hand, noticing. Where are your emotions located in your body right now? Some people say that it's here, or here, or here. And I don't know where you would say that your emotions or how you're feeling literally right now in this particular room. How you would locate that. And I know that you can close your eyes and just notice any areas in your body where you're feeling a particular sensation, a kind of an emotion, or just a kind of an awareness of being here, now. That's right. And I wonder when you find in your body that particular kind of emotion, I wonder if it has a color. And if so, what color is that? That's right, it's white. And as you're imagining or seeing white, is it moving? No. And so white staying particularly still, in a particularly white way. Not moving yet, but knowing that white can move in your body as you become completely aware. In your body of white, and the particular movement of white. And I don't know if, when your unconscious mind comes forward, how it will move that hand and that arm. I don't know if when white comes into your body, your arm will gradually raise and go up, but only as quickly or as fast as your unconscious mind sees white moving in some particular way. That's right. And as you're imagining white and imagining moving, I don't know what you're seeing, but I wonder, what's all you're seeing? What's everything else that you're seeing when you're not seeing white? So looking for a particular quality of fluttering eyelids, indicating a particular kind of trance. And you can know that your unconscious mind can lift that hand only as quickly or as slowly as you can begin to imagine a dance, seeing a dance or movement of any kind in your mind's eye. Knowing that as you're imagining that or seeing that, or perhaps moving into that now, noticing. That's right, what happens. When your unconscious mind comes forward, it makes movements in your body almost automatically. That's right. In your eyes, mouth. Just noticing how interesting that is. To not try and make movement, but just allow movement to happen automatically in any way that it happens here, now. And as you're imagining that, you can imagine everything else that you're not imagining. That's right. And as you're imagining that, you can imagine all that you're not hearing now when you're paying attention to that. And in all the other ways, that's right, that you're not moving when you're imagining that. That's right. And I wonder how your unconscious mind will let you know that you're ready to stand up, that you're ready to begin perhaps moving. I don't know. But I do know that whenever you're ready to move, that as a dancer you know what it means to come into movement in a particular way that feels comfortable to you, and in a particular way that feels right. That's right. And I wonder, whenever you're ready, only at the rate at which your unconscious mind comes into a particular kind of movement. That you can begin that, and I'll be quiet as you allow your unconscious mind to come forward into movement, dancing whatever it is that you see, in whatever way that feels comfortable to you. feeling that movement in your body, and the way that it's moving, and it's so moving, isn't it? And just noticing. And returning once again to the sounds of the room, to the particular feeling of the floor underneath your feet, noticing your breath, and the changing sensations of my hand as your unconscious mind once again holds up that arm. Noticing the changing sensations of my hand as you pay attention to something else. And in paying attention to something else, lowering your arm, but only as quickly or as slowly as your unconscious mind takes all of the resources gathered from that dance into every cell in your body, filling you with that kind of white, so that you can use that for another time when you're feeling particularly like that kind of movement would be useful. And I don't know when that will be, and you don't know when that will be. I don't know if it will be in a dream or if it will be when you're walking down the street, that you'll come to realize that perhaps a shift occurred or a transformation of some kind. But I do know that whatever happened was very moving in that way that movement is. And coming once again into awareness of the room, paying attention to the sound of my voice, noticing the rustling of the chairs, remembering that there's an audience, and coming into your body and opening your eyes whenever it's comfortable to you.
Yeah, I want to thank Carly and Kristen, but they're not done yet. That we're going to, in the little bit of time we have left, we're going to take questions as a panel and discuss. And we have one more partner, and this is Dawn Lilly. We've asked to be part of the panel who has expertise on several aspects of Ausbildungstanz. And maybe, Dawn, should we start with your notes there? And then what we're going to do, we'll have take some brief question and answers, and then we're going to have a sort of formal break. And individually, or in groups, that all of us will be available in this way, that people who need to leave can do so. We're going to formally conduct the panel just for 10 more minutes. So I just want to let you know. Dawn, words.
Huge topic. To me, somebody once said, I think, that the Weimar Republic was a political idea that was doomed to failure from the very beginning. But of course, what happened creatively and culturally was a remarkable thing, because as Mel so wonderfully brought out, with wonderful things I've never seen before. Thank you.
This is the just before the kill. You know?
No. It's
No.
But it was a product of so many things that had come before, because Expressionism, as Mel pointed out, began in the beginning of the 20th century, really, in literature, in art, and in movement. Of course, Laban, whose main thing, I think, there were two things really with Laban. One is that he said that movement reflected the inner feelings of the individual, and that movement could affect the inner feelings of the individual. So it was a give and take both ways. And to me, this comes into there are two aspects, I think, and I think Mel agrees, to the whole German artistic way or way of life. And that is, one is the inner, mystical, sometimes dreamy aspect, and the other is that which needs absolute order, and everything has to be put in order. Sometimes they work together and you get wonderful things. Sometimes they clash. For Laban, there were the inner feelings that the movement expressed, and then there was the whole exploration of space, up, down, side, down, and the icosahedron just had different emotions attached to different areas. I think it's that exploration of space that was so important to dance. To Wiegmann, who was his student, she once said that dance was about the human body conquering space, not working with it or working in it, but conquering it, and that dance always had to do with overcoming that space. I yelled at Mel indirectly before because, of course, Laban's system of Labanotation, which is gives you an exact rendering of a dance, is the best way to recreate a dance. And the witch dance, which has been Labanotated, wasn't recreated from Labanotation. So I yelled at him for that, and that's okay.
No. What's interesting in the time we live in, I didn't even know it had been notated, was that so much now you can find on YouTube. And this is changing the way we're thinking about dance and even recovering dance. And it's not a conflict, it's another item. And this is what Carly used.
Yes, I know that.
Looking at it and then thinking, now what? How does it enter into my body? We'll listen to her first approaches to it.
Yeah, and only Carly. This is a remarkable young woman. Whom I've known long before this, so that I can guarantee that, because I think very few young people, dancers or otherwise, would have been able to do what you did today. And I'd like to pass it on to you. How did you feel doing this?
Which part of it?
Well, take anyone, the Wiegmann, the Gert, or well, I don't know how you felt doing the...
Yeah, well, honestly, doing the reproductions, I felt like a bit of an imposter.
Why?
I did. I think because I didn't feel like I'd be able to recreate them with a similar essence. And that's not to say that it was a success or a failure. It's just the feelings that I was having as I was in the process of watching them on YouTube, and as I was performing them, because it's always a little bit different, and it makes a difference to have an audience, of course, and also because the videos are they're very distorted. So the timing and it's a little bit blurry. So there was, some things I just had to guess at.
But also, you put this together, everything in record time.
I did.
And its purpose was not really to, quote, recreate. There's nothing to feel bad about. But it was to give it, a living impression in a short period of time, and not, having the training of any of these people or the psychology or the audiences or anything like that. But to give an impression, I think, is absolutely crucial. I mean, I was so happy with it because it's different than looking at film clips.
Yes.
It's different than hearing about it or seeing stills or having someone who hasn't seen it tell you about it. I mean, it's crazy. So having a living impression means everything, and it's the first step into understanding it. And the same thing with the audiences, that spectators have no idea what they're supposed to feel or whether to applaud or laugh or all of that, where people at the time certainly, knew what they thought they were supposed to do, except with Garrett. No one knew.
Yeah.
How did the Geert feel? That was put together the quickest.
Yep. That felt, well, that was interesting, I have to say, because we added the music at the last minute. Just to
Was
be
that the music
very
you wanted?
candid about that. That music was different than the music we had listened to earlier. And
We had the wrong music.
for me, it's okay. It was hard to not dance to the music. And the sense that I got from everything that you talked to me about, Mel, and from the video that I saw, I don't think that she was dancing to music. I feel like it was very, just her.
No, she did it so many different ways that she danced against the music, with the music. She had a pianist in these things. But there's almost no way you could get this thing right or wrong, because Geert didn't get it right or wrong. It was always, whatever amused her is how she did it. And that's why it's considered something beyond dance. Because the audiences came for the who knows what's going to happen, and that's why there's a correlation between that and the sort of performance art, ethos. How about the last dance?
How did I feel about that? I actually felt the most comfortable with that.
Wow.
Just because it was me.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I could do, that whatever happened would be what happened. And, it wasn't being compared to anything else.
I ask you to ask the question. Because the things I'm thinking about are kind of naive and primitive. Things that I would ask a friend, like, what were you thinking during, sort of thing. But beyond that, what would you ask?
What would I ask Carly?
Let's suppose that Carly was a client, and after that session, what would you ask?
Well, I always ask, how was that? Actually. And I guess this was an interesting experiment for me. I've never done or been asked to do anything quite like this. And obviously, normally, hypnosis sessions last anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. So, doing a kind of rapid induction and then just seeing what happened was very interesting. And I just wonder. And I think that obviously a kind of fractionation of your experience, like sometimes you're in the trance, sometimes you're out and you're the dancer performing, and then sometimes you're back in again, and then you're the dancer again. And it's like where your identity kind of, blurs into what's familiar to you as movement and what was unfamiliar as movement would be my question.
I think I would have to say that most of it felt pretty familiar just because it was my body. It was me making the movement. And I improvise a lot, so, but not under, not in a trance. I don't improvise in a trance regularly.
Really?
No, never before.
How do you know?
But I feel like there's a lot of, in improvisation, I do a lot of structured improvisation, so I'll always kind of be working inside of an arc, or I'll be thinking one step ahead, and with this, I just didn't know what was going to happen next. But there was a trust. I trusted.
Frank, should we open this up to ask?
Well, maybe one last question, maybe also to John. Was there influence of German expressionistic dance on American dance?
There is a certain amount. At one point, it was denied altogether. That it was always said that historically American modern dance developed one way, while at the same time, actually earlier German modern dance. But there has been a certain amount. If you go back to the 20s, and the Denishorn School, actually in the teens, they had someone teaching what was called Central European modern dance from about 1915 or 1916 on, so that somebody like Martha Graham and Darsanti were all exposed to that. Then Wiegmann and Harold Kreutzberg and a lot of other people toured through, at least in New York and in major cities, so that they were seen. And there was a teacher named Hans Wiener who came to New York in the 20s. And of course, Hanya Holm was sent to teach the Wiegmann technique in around 1931, I think, and which she taught for a while and then went off on her own. So there was definitely an influence of different people that came creeping in, if you will, and that was long denied. But the German technique, of course, a lot of it was so much from Wiegmann, especially improvisational, and the early leading modern American dancers didn't do that. They each set with their own technique, and whether it was Graham or Humphrey Wyman, and went ahead with that. And the Germans also had a tremendous use of the upper body, just from the waist up, that they would use a great deal, which was not seen a lot in the so-called American modern. But there was influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in unexpected places like Radio, City, that a lot of these lesser people were gay or communist or Jewish, and they found their way here, and also into odd corners of America, and taught, without talking about it.
So they didn't tell you where they came from?
Yeah, they never told you. And suddenly you would ask them, you discovered that this person was a star in Berlin. That this old ballet, master, that it never talked about it, never did ballet practically in that world. So there's a kind of subterranean influence of this. And
you mentioned the living theater, I think, also.
well, with Garrett,
maybe you can, before we go to questions.
One fast story was I had to, in Paris, deliver a lecture on the topic that these are things that academics love to do. And the topic was how the American avant-garde of the 1960s had influenced and recreated the European avant-garde. So of course, I turned that on its head. That I said it was all due to misunderstandings. That they were mostly concerned with the Living Theater as the first great American company in 1959, 1960, and 61 to go to Europe to change things. But I said that how that happened was that Judith Malina had read Theater in its Stubble, Artaud's masterpiece, in 1959, and he talked about this great surrealist theater, and she had no idea what it was, and then she remembered Valeska Garrett, who she worked for. And Valeska Garrett was always showing her breast and her ass to people who didn't tip in her cafe, and was making ugly sounds and expressions and so forth. So, and she remembered Garrett saying that Cocteau entitled her The Dance of Expressionism. So Malina changed her look then, and I should have brought the photograph, to look exactly like Valeska Garrett, exactly, and began to create this new theater of cruelty based on her understanding of what she thought Artaud was like, which Artaud was never like that. Artaud had no nudity quite like that, and certainly no ugly bodies on the stage. So it was a complete weird misunderstanding of what provocation was in different cultures, and she took it from Garrett. So, and it's an unknown link.
Yeah, it's quite a truly fascinating story. I know we have the third Obama debate tonight, so maybe we take 3 questions, 1, 2, and 3. We have a microphone, 1 second, and so we're recording it, yeah.
Mel, the word
The
word I was looking for was mime, M-I-M-E. I didn't hear. Is that a different tradition? What is the connection?
Normally we think of mime in different ways than the Germans did, that they even called, they made distinctions in pantomime and so forth. But this idea of mime itself is a sort of French invention that the Germans didn't associate with Garrett as doing mime. She was doing weird characterizations that, including, I don't know how you could mime amusing despair. She was creating these odd things and juxtaposing them all together. So I've never come across someone just calling it what we might think is mime.
What is mime then, if not characterization?
Well, mine, it has to do with imitation, I think. And what Geert was doing was something way beyond that. That it's one of the things that we wanted to work on, and probably will, this is, you know, Carly and me, is one of Geert's dances was called Kudamm, downtown Berlin, where she played 9 different characters in 3 minutes of 2 prostitutes, 2 sailors, 1 gay, 1 straight, a nanny, a policeman, and so forth, but it still wasn't mine. She played a car, she played a horse, and she did it in ways that didn't seem anything like a car or horse. There was something else that she was trying to get across.
Any closer?
What dance training have you had? Have you studied classical ballet? And are you now associated with a dance troupe or a school or a group in New York or San Francisco or wherever?
I studied classical ballet and classical modern at the Juilliard School.
From what age did you start from?
I started dancing when I was 4. My parents are here. 4. Just check in. I started dancing when I was 4, went to school at Juilliard, and I now am currently a freelancer. I work several different projects here in New York City. One, I'm a choreographer myself, and I make my own work. I work at Judson Church. I have a series there that's a curated performance series. I also work with the Equus Projects, which is a site-specific dance company that works with horses. And then horses, yeah. And then I am currently working with an Irish choreographer here in the city on a duet that's toured to Ireland and will be premiering here next spring at La Mama. So I'm very busy.
Hi, I know that Tennessee Williams and Valeska Gert were together in Provincetown in 1940. So was it before then or after then that?
No, it was before, and Tennessee Williams despised her.
Yeah. Well,
And there are people who say, which I believe, that Geert shows up endlessly in Tennessee Williams' notions of voracious women.
in the Connecticut's Fräulein, that's the model for
Right. And Tennessee Williams quit her cabaret because Geert wanted all the waiters to share their tips. And Tennessee Williams thought that was communistic.
What year was this, though? Around
That would have been 38, 39.
yeah.
It's what?
Thank you.
Maybe one last
Yeah,
statement or question. Yeah.
I was just curious about these artists that you showed, that you spoke about. What was the context in which they presented their work? I mean, was this something akin to downtown underground art, where people expected something odd to happen? Was this more upscale audiences who were looking to be titillated? I mean, I'm just kind of curious.
Everything changed so quickly that in some cases the venues were tiny downtown type or even cabaret or small dance studios. And someone like von Leben became a choir master at I think the Staatsoper, the biggest venue, and so forth. Their careers kept changing, and they usually went up and up and down and down and up and so forth. They went every which way the way choreographers and dancers can, and that most of them did what happens today, that at some point they had to stop their careers to become teachers. And in some ways that was good, because there's other generations that studied. I think Bausch and some other people in Germany studied with Kreutzberg and
Bausch studied with Jost.
Jost, yeah. That these choreographers and dancers, many of them outlived the war into the 1950s and began again. And we're still seeing this second, third, and fourth generations of them. And now I think they're more, you see it in academia, they're more honored, and they're captured on film clips and that are disseminated. So and also there's interest internationally in them. But the venues themselves were the smallest at first and began to change. It's probably its high point was in 1928. And then the novelty of it began to diminish.
Well, I would like to thank Mel, especially Carly, also for being here, our hypnotist, and also Dawn to come on such a short notice. But again, I would like to give a big round of applause for them, and especially Carly.